And welcome to HR Doctors. My name is Brent. I am the owner of the Vancouver Express Employment Professionals Office and the founder and producer of our HR Doctors Webcast, which is built under the premise of trying to help bridge the gap between employers, employees, and job seekers. I'm super excited to have Katelyn with me here today. Katelyn, tell us a little bit about yourself and why obviously you're here with us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. So, I'll just share a little bit about my own career journey and background.
Yeah.
I actually started off in the world of higher education, working with college students. I absolutely loved my time working with students. I got to do a lot of informal coaching when I was doing that. But I was actually living in the residence halls with the college students. And when my now husband and I got engaged, he said, "Oh, hey, I'm not moving into the dorms. So you're gonna, need to figure something out career-wise." And so that kind of set me on a new path. But I had gotten to do a lot of overseeing of hiring processes in my time in higher ed. I absolutely loved it. I just really enjoyed kind of that whole journey of bringing new people onto the team. And so from there, I kind of naturally pivoted into the world of recruiting. And that is where I have spent the majority of my career, is in talent acquisition. And I was kind of on the other side of things from where I'm at now, but I was working with hiring managers to help them.
Hey, Katelyn.
Yes.
Hey, sorry. I think it's me. I'm not plugged in. I'm just on Wi-Fi, and I think my Wi-Fi sucks. So
Okay.
I'm gonna plug.
Is it lagging?
Yeah, you know what? It like totally cut out. So I'm just gonna plug in here. I do have a cable here, which I probably should have been plugged into the whole time. Let's see if that does us any better. Yeah, let's sorry about that. Let's start again, unfortunately.
Oh, are you there?
You there? Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know if it tells me. We'll try that. I wasn't plugged in. Now I'm totally in. So are you on Wi-Fi? Or are you hardlined in?
I'm on Wi-Fi, but it should be totally fine.
I think it said my internet connection was unstable, so I'll take the credit for it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're okay, we'll start over. Unfortunately,
I disconnected and reconnected just in case. So
yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
We'll see.
Okay. So awesome. Well, welcome to HR Doctors. My name's Brent. Here we go, Julia. Welcome to HR Doctors. My name is Brent. I am the owner of the Vancouver Express Employment Professionals Office and the Specialized Recruiting Group, and the founder of the HR Doctors Webcast. I'm excited today to have Katelyn with me. Katelyn, thanks for joining. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and I guess how we ended up here on the journey and what you do.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you a little bit about just kind of my own career journey that I've been through. I started off in the world of higher education. So I was working with college students. I was a residence director. I was living in the residence halls with them. I got to do a lot of informal coaching in that role. But when my now current husband and I got engaged, he said, "Hey, I am not moving into the dorms. So you're going to need to figure out your whole career thing." And so it kind of gave me this chance to recalibrate. But I had gotten to do a lot of overseeing of hiring processes in my time in higher ed. I absolutely loved it. I loved that journey of bringing new people onto the team. And so from higher ed, I kind of naturally just pivoted into the world of recruiting and talent acquisition. And that is where I have spent the majority of my career, is working with job seekers, but, mostly collaborating with hiring managers, right, to find the right people to bring onto their team. And, there were so many things I loved about recruiting. I really got that front row seat to what sets certain job seekers apart from other job seekers. But I always just kept finding that my heart was really with the job seekers. So I like to tell people, I pivoted from, hashtag team hiring manager to hashtag team job seeker. And I moved into career coaching. And that is what I've been doing for the last few years now, is partnering with job seekers on their journey in the midst of making pretty significant career pivots, career transitions, career moves, really trying to kind of take control over the next steps of their career journey.
Yeah, that's great. On your LinkedIn, you've got crafted careers, you have sweet spot careers, you got career coach listed in a couple different ways. Do you just have multiple different things going on, or what are your focuses right now?
Yeah, I'm someone that I like to have my hands in multiple things simultaneously. I love multitasking. So the main way that I partner with job seekers is through Crafted Careers, which is my own personal career coaching business. I also have co-founded Sweet Spot Careers with a dear friend of mine who is also a coach. And so that's primarily an online course experience, a little bit more, DIY for job seekers to be able to, empower them and equip them in the midst of the transition. But yes, primarily right now it's through my coaching business, Crafted Careers.
Yeah, and through our intro calls, one of the things that you mentioned you focus a lot on with the people that you work with in their job search. And to clarify, you work primarily with like unemployed job seekers?
Some of them are currently unemployed. Some are, gainfully employed currently and just ready for the next big thing. So it just kind of depends.
Right. And then you take them through a process, but a big part of what you do with them is personal branding and really utilizing LinkedIn. I don't know if there's other tools you utilize as well, but I'm assuming that LinkedIn's really like the big one, being that it's this like amazing business related networking tool, and really using LinkedIn. And we can touch on either of those, but I guess, I don't know what makes most sense to dig into first, is whether it's that LinkedIn story or just the process you go through with people. But maybe tell us a bit about like when somebody does come to you, like what that process looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll kind of walk you through just kind of the journey that I take job seekers on. Obviously, yes, LinkedIn is a huge part of that. I have fully drank the Kool-Aid that is LinkedIn. But really, like the first step for any of us, and I really do think this is the step that, like 99% of people skip when it comes to the job search. When they know they're ready to job search, they immediately just want to jump to like, I got to update my resume and I got to go to the job boards. The step that people skip is what I like to refer to as kind of the clarity piece of all of this. We need to get really clear on where it is that we want to go so that we can get the strategy in place, right? That's best going to most quickly, most efficiently, most effectively take us there. And that clarity journey, it really has to do with a couple of different things. I tell people that ultimately what we want to do in this step of everything is we want to create a measuring stick, right? And this measuring stick, this consists of your values, what you really want, what your non-negotiables are, right? And when we have that measuring stick, that's when then we can, have something that we can hold every potential opportunity up against to see if that alignment is really there. And this is how we're going to ensure that wherever you end up next, right, you're going to get that experience of fulfillment that we're all looking for. Anytime we're looking to make a career move, it's because something is missing in the current situation that we're at. So we got to pause. We got to do that like inner clarity work first, create that measuring stick for ourselves. Once we have that measuring stick, that's when we can start to like move it more into the strategy portion. And I really encourage people to kind of flip the traditional way that we think about job searching on its head, right? Like we have been so taught to think about what the answer to the question is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we tend to really hone in on job titles and roles. And then like, once we have like a title in mind, that's when we can like go to the job boards and say, okay, who's hiring for that specific title? When the truth is, I think that fulfillment has way more to do with who we work for and who we work with, the people and the company that we're at, right? When that is in alignment, there is way more flexibility surrounding the exact title or the role that we're holding for us to be able to experience fulfillment. Versus if we're out of alignment with the company or the organization or the people, we can be in our quote unquote dream job title over here, and it's not going to be our dream job, right? Like it's going to be a bad match. And so when we do that clarity work, create that measuring stick, right? That's when we can begin to have some clarity around what companies are going to be able to provide us with those things that we need. And so by company searching, rather than quote unquote job searching, we actually can create a strategy that is way more intentional, that's way more targeted, and ultimately is way more effective than simply by just heading straight to the job boards, which is what we're all tempted to do because it's what we were all taught to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and
that's,
I think it's something worth like really like planting a flag on, because I've had a couple guests on the show, some who are like Lori comes to mind, who is the director of HR for DNEG for North America. It's like 7,000 employees, post-production company. And the number one thing that she really focused on was like your personal values. And one of the things we ended up digging into was how, you know, the new student coming out of high school, 18 years old, there isn't this like discovery process that the system takes anybody through to say, what do you want and how do you figure that out? And I shared with her, and I think it's a really great anecdote. I was a hockey coach, a non-parent volunteer hockey coach, and I picked one of the kids up who couldn't get to the rink one day. We're on the way to a game, and just asked him the natural question, like, what are you planning to do after graduation? And he had this, like, you could see this wave come over him. Like, I've been asked this question by so many adults and I don't have an answer. And this is like an overwhelming thing to ask me, and I don't know what to say. And that like, you can see it was overwhelming for him, and he felt probably like a sense of like failure in a way of not knowing what that answer was. And I think like going through that personal like exploration process when you're young and in your transitions and constantly throughout. And I think something that's really, really important. So I'm 6 years into owning my Express office, and about 2 to 3 years in, I went through a leadership program with Express. And the first part of the program was about getting a really clear vision and mission for your business. And I had a hard time coming up with these like corporate vision statements. I felt that they were very just business keyword sounding, synergy, and, you know, all these different things that just, you know, these cliche words. And I actually ended up really getting inspired by Cam Harold, who is the former CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, who was, I think, employee number 14, left as employee number 3,100, joined the company at a $1 or $2 or $3 million company, left as like $100 million company. And he wrote a book called Vivid Vision, which was about really getting clarity of like what your 3-year goal is, not worrying about how you're going to get there, not setting a 1-year goal, not setting a 5-year goal, but setting it far enough in the future where like you have to dream a bit, but not so far that the dream is unrealistic.
Right.
His whole thing, and it took me a year to really get clarity around it, because I didn't want to just put something together for the sake of doing it. And I'm an A-type driver. I am not a creative. I have a hard time like, you know, drawing stick figures, you know, like that isn't in me. I know, like it's
I'm the same way.
Yeah, that piece isn't in me. And in his book, he's like, you literally need to like disconnect from your business. And this was for the business owner. It was like, disconnect from your business, go into nature, leave your phone, take a pen and paper, and write down like every key area of your business, of your personal life, of your family, of your relationships, like literally every little aspect that you can think of, and start to just think of like 3 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? And it was a really tough process for me. And I think it's a great thing to share, especially through my journey. I'm a huge golfer, and this was in the middle of COVID and the golf courses were closed. And I went to my like favorite golf course, and it was pouring rain. And I sat like in one of their driving range bays in a lawn, in like one of those like fold up lawn chairs, and sat there and started journaling stuff. And I'd never done anything like that before. And I ended up getting booted out of there when like one of the greenskeepers came up and noticed I was there after an hour. And I ended up going, the next place I could think of where there wouldn't be anybody was the cemetery. There's like a cemetery like a couple like minutes away from there, and was there for another hour in my car with the rain. And I figured like, what a place to be inspired, that like, you know, eventually I'll end up in a place like this, and I better like make the best of all the opportunities that are in front of me. And I think the tie-in to all this is that it is extremely difficult to be a job seeker. It's extremely difficult when you're unemployed. It's extremely difficult when you're competing against like all the people you're competing against. And I think it is really important to go through this initial step and really set the foundation for what you're looking for. And the last piece that I'll touch on for this is, as an employment and recruiting company, we're often contacted by people who will apply and say like, I'm open to anything. You know, I'm just looking for a job. And we really try to be empathetic with those people and give them guidance and coaching. But, you know, like, and like one of the like internal kind of challenges or issues we've seen is it's almost like saying, they say I'm looking for anything, and we go, okay, great. Well, I have a director of finance position that pays $200,000 a year. Are you interested in that? And they're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. It's like, yeah, are you an accountant? And they're like, no. And it's like, well, that's not going to fit then. Like that doesn't work. You can't put your hand up and say, I'm open to doing anything, because the company doesn't want somebody who is willing or open to doing 100 different jobs. They want you to come in and apply saying, this is the type of company I want to work for. This is the type of role. This is what I'm highly motivated about. This is what I'm actively seeking with you and these other like really similar companies. Mm-hmm. And like, you have to paint a picture for them that, that you see alignment with them and they'll see alignment with you. And it has to be this relationship that ultimately gets created. And so I love that that's your first step, and that's something you take people through. And I know for myself is going through the journey that took me forever, having somebody there, whether it was the book being guided by Cam or having someone like yourself to hold their hand and ask them thought-provoking questions that as interviewers we ask people to help get that out of them, because it's there for everybody. You just may not know how to get the answers out.
Totally. Well, and I like to tell people, like, the clarity portion isn't necessarily like you're going to come out of it saying, okay, I'm going to do this exact role at this exact company. Like, sometimes clarity is just clarity around like kind of like that very next step. Like, it's clarity around like, these are the things that are most important to me, right? The things that I value most, the things that are my non-negotiables. Like that does give us clarity then around what the next step is. Cause a lot of this is like, we just need to cross some things off the list, right? We got to like to start honing this in, because like what you named, and I experienced the same thing doing recruiting. People would say, I just need a job. I'll do anything. And it's like, I mean, we get it that jobs are around livelihood, right? And people do need to make a living and an income. But the truth is, like, fulfillment in work comes from like that intersection, right? Of like what you're really good at, what you're passionate about, what you're skilled in, what you've got experience in, right? Like your story, and then also what someone else needs. Right? Like that's the other piece of it. And so, but you got to get clear around like your portion of all of this before you can ever even like be able to articulate why someone else needs what it is that you bring to the table, which ultimately is what job searching is. I mean, you and I know this, having been in recruiting, talent acquisition, there's an element of sales to this, right? And it should be sales on both ends. Truly, like that's how it should operate. It doesn't always, work out that way. But I think in the ideal situation, it's a company selling people on why they're this great place to work, and a candidate selling the company on how they will be able to come in, right? And mesh with all of that. So
yeah. And I think it's tough too for everybody, because no two companies are the same. No two like interview processes are the same. No two candidates are the same. Like, it's really hard for everybody, which is again where this disconnect has been created, or part of it, which is, why we're having these chats like we're having, to try to give clarity to both sides. Yes. I had an interview with a candidate yesterday where I asked him what the most important things to him was, and he had some really phenomenal answers, and asked. And eventually it was like, you've never brought up money. And he was like, well, like, money's not the most important thing to me. I'm like, well, like, I get that, and I know this
part of the measuring stick. It's part of
I know it's a taboo subject, but like this is a job where you're gonna do work in exchange for compensation. Like, it shouldn't be a taboo thing. It should be something that, I've seen lots of posts lately about how, like, I think in the States they're making it a mandate where wages need to be posted in job postings and descriptions and stuff like that. Yeah. And I don't have a view on that one way or the other. Like, I think it's great that companies have transparency. But again, I really think that it's important that, like, if compensation is an important piece to you, that you bring it up. And if that we're misaligned, like, why wait till later in the process to bring it up?
Move on, right?
Yeah, like, it's not a fit. And of course, like, I said, you could be an employee here and be so fulfilled and have all these things, but if I wasn't paying you a paycheck, then you're just a volunteer. Like, is that what you're looking for? Like, no, like, money's a huge piece. Don't be afraid to bring it up. Maybe don't bring it up as the first thing. The most important thing to me is money, unless maybe that's like a really important thing for you. Maybe it is the number one most important thing. Yeah. And that would also potentially be a critical piece for the person looking to hire you. If you're in like a high pressure sales role and they're like, what's important to you? And you're like, I want to make tons of money. They're like, great answer. How are you going to do it? And then further from there, like, and I obviously I was very kind to the guy. I wasn't like, this is a deal breaker because you didn't bring it up, but we need to have this chat because, I want you to make lots of money here. I want you to be fulfilled. What does that measuring stick look like? How can we meet each other's expectations, right?
Right, totally. Well, and you and I know, like in commission-based roles, right? When someone is motivated by money, that's actually a very positive thing, right?
Totally.
Like you know they're going to deliver. So
yeah, and I've even asked, like, how much do you want to make? And I've got some people, that'll be like, oh, I want to make like $60,000 a year. And to me, like, I want somebody to say that they want to make more than $100,000 a year because, like, great, like now I know you're going to be highly motivated versus, if you hit that 60K mark, like, are you just telling me that because you're trying to be conservative and you don't want to miss an opportunity? And again, I just think there needs to be there's an understanding of like how things work, but also you just need to be really honest with yourself and be honest with the person on the other side. And if that results in a disconnect, then great, figure that out early, not later on.
Right. Like a job search is not about trying to make everybody want to hire you, right? Like a lot of this, and like, as we get into, I know at some point we'll talk about personal branding, but I tell people like, you should have like people that you're repelling as a part of this process, right?
Totally.
Like you should have companies you're repelling because it's the wrong people in the wrong companies. And that's good. Like we want to like, sift through all of it and cut to the chase and figure out, no, like who are the people in the companies that truly are going to be able to give you what you need, right?
Yeah.
And what you really want, and that you're going to be able to come in there, right, and thrive and flourish. And it's going to be this mutually beneficial thing. But we can only get to that by like repelling some people. And I do think that that's, for some people, that feels scary and overwhelming because they're like, I want to want to be hireable to everyone. And it's like, no, this is just about like you being hireable and the right match for the right companies, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it like, again, ties so well in, especially as we're, doing this to help the job seeker out there better understand the process and how you help people through that is, companies have very elaborate talent acquisition processes, interviews, assessments, tests, all these different things, because I personally believe that most companies, when they do hire somebody, do it with really good intentions and are going to greatly invest in the people that they bring in terms of training, onboarding, coaching, performance management, development, and perks, benefits, compensation, all these different things. And the reason that they have these deep processes is because they've been burned by making bad hires in the past or seen horror stories of similar situations like that, and ultimately establish these deep processes to make sure that when they do bring someone in, that person truly is a fit. And, we've seen these mass layoffs happen in recent through LinkedIn, through the tech space. And as a result, seeing people that are saying, I've applied for 1,000 jobs in the last few months and I'm not getting callbacks and I'm not getting anything. And the first thing I think is that you haven't done exactly what Katelyn's talking about. You haven't gone through this personal vision and mission and like really figuring out what you want, because if you did, there's no way that you could apply to 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs, because 900 plus of those jobs wouldn't align with what you're looking for. And that is coming through to the employers that you're applying to, because you're not articulating that, and that isn't coming through with your application, and they're not willing to speak with you because you're missing the whole point of the conversation. So again, I just think there's so much importance to this part of the process.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's part of the process. It's crucial. Like to skip this really is going to it's not going to set you up for success in your job search. You are going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel stuck. You're going to be ghosted by people. You know what I mean? Like all the things people name, a lot of this is because people don't take the time to pause and do the hard work first, because it's hard. Right? Like doing some of that inner clarity work, like what you need, like going out onto the golf course in the cemetery, like, to sit there with your thoughts without your phone and really like have to say, who am I? What do I need? What do I want? It's not easy. It's not easy for any of us, right? We don't really live in a world that, promotes that. We're very like fast paced, high energy, go, 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 do. And this involves a lot of like, no, just, you need to sit and be with your thoughts. So
and maybe which would be great. But again, for someone like myself, where that was really hard for me to, think in the future and really be kind of creative and imaginative, like that's just, I'm just a go. I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. And to sit there and do that, it was big homework for me. It was really difficult. And again, maybe you've got it dialed and figured out. If not, you need to spend the time, effort, and energy, and like, again, be patient with yourself, whether it's, trying to identify material that will help unlock that from you, or engage someone like yourself, or whatever it is. But it's critical. If you don't figure this out, and you don't know what your personal values are, and you don't know what you want for yourself, then you are setting yourself up and your next employer up for a massive disappointment. And that could have even further exponential ramifications later on, as you get perceived as a jumper, or you get let go because there was an alignment, or because you misrepresented what you were looking for, because you didn't ask the questions you needed to ask to see if there'd be a fit, and you end up leaving. Like, all these things will then continue to compile and repeat themselves until you realize that you need to look at what's important, and then look for organizations that aligns with.
Yes. No, snaps to that 100%. With everything you just said, and what you need. I mean, I think two things I want to add. Number one, yes, there are so many different ways that you can do this, right? I like to tell people there's not a one size fits approach to doing that inner clarity work, right? I mean, there's amazing assessments and tools that are out there. There's online courses, right? There's simply like finding a mentor. Like, for some people, that's what they need. They just need one person, right? That's like, ahead of them on the road, that can like kind of help guide them. For some people, yeah, it's coaching, like one-on-one coaching is really helpful. Whatever it is for you, but don't do it alone. That's kind of the second thing I want to say. I am a huge proponent that job searching needs to be a team sport. If you keep it between yourself and the computer, you're not going to end up somewhere where you're going to experience fulfillment and alignment and all the things that we're talking about, and all the things that we all really want when it comes to our career. You need to let other people in whatever way that looks like for you, right? There's amazing online communities you can join, right? You can join coaching programs that are group coaching. You can, whatever it is, maybe it's just friends and family for you. That's great too. But let people in on the journey, because they'll be able to speak into it also. Like, oftentimes clarity can come from other people speaking truth over us and saying, these are the things that I've seen in you. And it just kind of helps bring it to the forefront. Yeah,
that's awesome. What's step two? I know.
Yes. So once we've got some clarity, right? I always tell my job seekers, okay, this is the fun part. This is where we get to create a list of companies that appear to potentially be in alignment. We're not really going to know until, we do some digging and we get to talk to some people, but we want to have like a jumping off point for the strategy. And I am just a firm proponent that having companies and a list of companies, I usually say like 10 to 15 companies that you're curious about. That's simply all this needs to be. You're really curious about. Once we have that list, it allows us to go to LinkedIn then and be really intentional with our time, our energy, and our effort, and how we're using LinkedIn. Because at that point, when we have target companies that we're going after, and don't necessarily go immediately to their job boards page and see what they're hiring for, go to their company page and get curious about who works there. Get curious about who recently left working there, right? Get curious about who has worked there in the past, whatever it is. Ideally, what we want to do is be able to just start simply having conversations with people at these companies, because it's through conversation that we're going to continue to get that clarity, whether that's clarity of like, ooh, this company's not at all what I thought they were on paper, or their career page says X, Y, and Z, but I talked to 3 people and they all said, oh yeah, we say we have a value of this, but it's not really a value. That you can then say, great, cross them off the list and move on, or you're going to get confirmation. Everything that I think about this company, people are confirming that these things are true. And that's when you're going to know, like, okay, I want to put more time, energy, and effort into potentially pursuing something at this company. And then that's when we can get curious about what are our options. What are they currently hiring for right now? But you and I both know this, being in talent acquisition, the job boards are not a reflection of what's actually going on there, right? Like, sometimes jobs get left on the job boards when someone's already been hired. Sometimes jobs are up there, collecting applications. Sometimes jobs are coming down the pipeline and they have not made it to the job boards yet companies already have some people in mind for that role, right? Yeah. So you can't let the job board be like our end all be all about what our options or our opportunities are. The people that work at those companies, they're going to be our best bet in terms of being able to clue us in on what potential opportunities currently exist, are going to exist in the near future, might exist a little bit longer down the line, whatever that might be. But getting access to conversations like really is the next step. Nice. the process. Talk to people. And at the very least, what this is doing is it's building community for you, right?
Yeah.
These are building like people that, now they know you. They know your value. They know your story. They know your interests. They know your measuring stick, right? Like what the things are that you're looking for. And even if it's not at that company, these people know people at other companies, and maybe it's comparable companies. Maybe it's companies you've never heard of, but they know about it, right? And like start to get warm introductions, and all of this snowballs. And then from there, kind of like the next step I take people through is like, okay, how do we really like up your visibility on LinkedIn? These conversations are awesome. They're amazing. But the truth is LinkedIn has the potential to really curate like visibility at scale for yourself and for, your we call it your personal brand, but really it's your career brand. Like, what is it you want to be known for, right? And so, yes, you can start with overhauling your LinkedIn profile, right? But beyond that, how do you take your LinkedIn profile, which is essentially kind of like your billboard for your career, and how do you take it from being like on this backcountry road with maybe a few people driving by to like putting it on the highway where really get eyeballs on it? And we do that by engaging and participating with the conversations that are already happening on LinkedIn, and by even starting conversations of our own, right? Like this is how you really allow people to see your thought process. How do you approach problem solving, right? Like you really get to show some thought leadership for your industry, your area of expertise, right? You can even gear it towards if you're trying to get into a new industry, right? Or break into a new field or a new role, whatever it is. And so in terms of like how we want to use LinkedIn, number one, it's about accessing conversations. And number two, it's about curating and cultivating visibility at scale. Yeah.
I think this ties so well into a couple different, I guess, points that really resonated for me. So I've been in staffing and recruitment for 12 years, been in HR for close to 20, which really pains me to say. I think it ages me very well. But in executive staffing and recruitment, I have been contacted many times by a person who is a great candidate who doesn't fit the positions we're working on. We also get people that reach out all the time who, just maybe are still just don't understand the process of the search, and we try to give as much guidance as possible. But there have been many times where, again, from an agency perspective, we have the roles that we're working on. We can only fill people in the positions that we have opportunities with our clients on. Of course, if we come across an amazing job seeker, we can market them to some relationships we have. That's definitely a strategy that agencies take. It's one that we undertake if we have somebody who we really feel is a great candidate that is marketable into an organization. But really going back to your first piece about identifying the companies of interest, that for the last 12 years has been something I have like shared with people, where they'll reach out to me and say, I'm interested in a job, and unfortunately they don't look like they fit any of ours. And I'll ask that question. And I think years ago it wasn't a loaded question, and now it kind of is for me. Years ago it was really like asking inquisitively, like, what are the companies out there that you'd want to work for? And most of the time people wouldn't have an answer. And they're in their job search, they're actively looking, and yet they don't have like a target downrange that they want to hit. And so it's like, well, as an agency, how am I supposed to support you on that? And I think a lot of people think like it's our job to find them a job.
Yes.
And I think it really ties into what you're saying about how to leverage and utilize LinkedIn. Like doing so is marketing, and marketing is sales, and your job search is really about like creating value, which is sales. Like it's about why is this company gonna buy me? I want to exchange my labor, whether that's physical labor, mental labor, whatever that may be, in exchange for the money out of your company. I want to take money from your company and put it in my pocket. And the way I'm going to do that is by helping this company take money from other people. And that may sound like a negative thing, but it's like, that is what business is. And it's not that we're out there stealing from people and taking money from their pocket. We're walking the same path together, saying, hey, you want to give me this money. In fact, you're going to want to give me even more, because you're going to get a bigger return and bigger value from it, whether it's a business to a client, or an employee to an employer, or a job seeker to the hiring manager. And so I really think really having that targeted purpose, again, from a business standpoint, you would expect the business to have that, right? Who's our ideal client? Where are we going to go after? Well,
who's our target audience? Exactly.
Right.
That way for job seekers.
And then I think, really, as you mentioned, utilizing LinkedIn as a billboard, if you're driving on the side of the highway and there's a blank billboard and it says like, give me $100, you're going to be like, for what? Like, why? Like, that's all it says. Give me $100. Like, no one's going to fork the cash out. But if you have this amazing billboard and you're like, we can solve this amazing problem, people are going to be like, wow, I have that problem. I want to solve it. What's it going to cost me? Like, I'm ready. Like, maybe you get more than $100, maybe like whatever. Right. And so I think it really, like, to me, your LinkedIn profile, your approach and strategy on there is a demonstration of your behavior. I think like getting that clarity and alignment along the goals that you have in your career, the types of businesses you want to work for, is a demonstration of your willingness to take the time, effort, energy, how passionate and driven you are about what you want, how you're going to show up. All these things are demonstrations to a potential employer of who you're going to be when you do show up.
Totally, 100%. And I will say, I feel like the number one mistake I see people make when it comes to their LinkedIn profile, whether they're job seeking or not, is they're not building brand equity. And here's what I mean by that. They are renting their brand from their current role at their current company, or maybe it's even their former role at their past company, right? Like you get a headline space, and if it just says like, I'm a customer success manager at, fill in the blank company, that's you renting your brand, because the second you're not a customer success manager at X company, like, who are you? Right. Yeah. And really what we need to be doing is we need to be building brand equity by owning, right? Like, who are we, like, in our careers, right? What is that value that we bring to the table? And maybe that's the value we're bringing to the current company in our current role, but in general, right? Like, how do you talk about that value you bring? Because then that is what's going to really attract people, right? To want to reach out to you, to pursue you and say, wow, holy cow, how could we get this person on our team? And we know, recruiters are sourcing candidates and they're using LinkedIn. I was one of those recruiters for many years, right? Yeah. And actively reaching out to people. And so, at the end of the day, this isn't just about your immediate job search. This is about, how do you create a career insurance policy for yourself? Right. So that moving forward, right, no matter what happens, you have something to fall back on. You have a community of people surrounding you that know you and know your value. And you've got a brand that really tells that story and communicates and articulates it in a way that other companies and other people are going to be like, holy cow, we want to buy what you're selling, right? Exactly what you just said. And how much does it cost? Because we'll pay whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even go further with your LinkedIn, marketing strategy, because it's definitely one that I have coached many people on, where I say, like, if somebody reached out to me and said, Brent, I'm looking for a job, what do you have available? I kind of go like, take a look at our job board. They're all listed there, right? Yeah. If you're looking for a transaction, here's the answer. What you've put in is what you're going to get back out. If someone reached out to me and said, Brent, like, I'm really interested in Express. I've taken a look at the company website. I didn't see a position listed for an internal role. I don't know if you guys are hiring, but I'm really interested in learning more about the company, what you look for when you hire somebody. Like, I'm interested in recruitment, and if an opportunity were to ever open up, I'd love to be considered for it. Would you be open to a coffee for like 5 or 10 minutes or a Zoom, just to kind of chat about what you look for when you hire somebody? I will talk to that person for an hour. I will tell them everything they need to know to ace the interview. And who knows, maybe even like open a position up and go, you know what, we weren't hiring, but like, you strike me as somebody who is really like driven, motivated, knows what they want. That's what we're looking for. Home run. And you can take that approach with any company, which again, that is a sales strategy. Like, if I want to get in with some massive company, like let's say Amazon's here, or, a big one in Vancouver here is Lululemon head office. Like, if I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, like, I want to sell you recruitment. Do you want to buy it from me? Versus reaching out to like their talent acquisition team, their finance team, their purchasing teams, and reaching out and just saying, hey guys, like, I love Lululemon. Like, I wear your stuff. Like, I'm really like inspired by the fact that you've grown such an amazing company and that your head office is here in Vancouver. I'd love to learn more about the company. I assume you use agencies in some way, and I'd love to be a partner at some point, but understand there's a process, and like, if I can somehow like follow that process and be considered, that'd be great. But if not, really, I just think you guys are great. I assume the people within the company are awesome, and I'm interested in connecting with you, and have coffees and stuff like that. Like, that is how you're going to create those relationships, to be able to learn what it looks like, what a partner looks like. And maybe they're not a good partner for me. Maybe they have like terrible payment terms. Maybe they don't pay agency fees. Like, it's better for me to learn that and go like, I'm not going to waste my time and still make some great connections than to just be solely focused on like, you know, sending an email every time you see a job requisition open up saying, I want to fill this job. Can I fill this job for you? And they go, why does this guy keep emailing us? Right.
Totally. Oh yeah. 100%. Snaps that too. I'm like, preach, preach, preach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of this too is, you know, I mean, we know this being in recruiting, and I imagine this is even more true now, post COVID, but like the line to get in the front door in terms of like, if you're just purely going to focus on the application strategy, right? Like the line to get in the front door is insanely long. It's really hard to stand out, right? Like you can write an amazing cover letter, have a great resume, but like, there's still just like a volume reality. Like, so if you can be intentional about focusing time, energy, and effort into some of these other things, like what you and I are naming, like, right, rather than just sending an email to them saying, you have a requisition open, okay, I want to be your person, instead of just writing the cover letter and sending another application in to them, right? Like, how can you just get access to a real human in a conversation, right? And the chance to just learn more and to learn more about like, what are they looking for, right? What is going to help, you know, set a candidate apart? What is their process? You know, what are maybe the ways you specifically could upskill so that, you know, you would get paid more attention to, like whatever it might be. It's only going to help you on the clarity front, right? Yeah. It can't hurt you. So, but I think
as long as you have like purpose and tact in your approach, and you understand what's going on the other side. And that's another piece for the job seekers out there. I think the information exists, and it's really easy to point the fingers and blame and say, you know, yeah, there are sometimes job postings out there that aren't real. And sometimes they post a job externally because they have to follow the due diligence process, and yet they have an internal candidate that they were going to hire anyways. But to say that that's always the case is a total fallacy. There are tons of jobs out there. There's, you know, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs in Vancouver alone right now. Right. And I think like I even had a candidate the other day who had reached out, been interviewed by my team, found my email address some way, emailed me directly and said, Brent, like I've applied. I'm really interested in recruitment. I was interviewed by one of your team members. I wasn't contacted, which I assume means like I wasn't asked to go forward. I just wanted to reach out to make sure that my info got in front of you. If there was an opportunity to connect, I'd be really interested to do it. And I was like, yeah, I asked my team, I'm like, hey, tell me about this guy, right? Like immediately we're having a conversation about him, and I ended up picking up the phone and calling him. And the first thing he did was apologize for reaching out and for like kind of circumventing the process. And I was like, to me, it didn't negatively affect my like view of him. It's the last thing. It's the last thing I thought he should have done. Don't apologize for doing that. Like own it. Be like, I'm doing this because I'm serious about it. Like this is something I'm actively pursuing. I'm not interested in just being a resume on the pile. Like I'm doing something that not everybody is willing to do, and I'm not sorry for it. Like this is intentional. I'm not, you know, worried about breaking the chain of command. Like if somebody down below like didn't think the person was a fit, like that's great. I respect that, but like I want to get my information in front of you. And if you feel the same way, then great. And obviously the door's not open anymore. So why not go to the top? If you, and I don't think that I would say just always go straight to the top, you know, sure, send your application in, but maybe before sending an application in, again, it depends on your search. Do what you said, identify that company, look for the people within it. If you're looking for, let's say, a marketing role, like send a LinkedIn invite to the people in the marketing department.
On the marketing team. Exactly. Yeah.
Send them a message and say, hey, what do you look for when you guys hire somebody? What background and experience is relatable? And if you have that, then be like, hey, I think I'm going to sub an application. What do you think? Do you think I would fit? You know, like you can do so much to be
what advice do you have for me? It's also the best way you can vet a company, right? Yeah. Like things can look shiny on the outside, right? Yeah. And you and I both know, like, that doesn't mean they're shiny on the inside. And it's much easier to get answers to the questions you really need answers to. Like, if you've gotten this clarity, right, that like when it comes to your measuring stick, like one of your non-negotiables is like, you need to be at a company that's, I don't know, pushing like DEI initiatives, like hardcore, right? And maybe it says that on their career page, they're all about DEI initiatives, right? It's easier to get a real answer to that in just a like conversation with someone that works there than through the interview process, right? Because like in the interview process, you know, you can ask great questions on both ends and everyone's still on their best behavior. So I think this goes for both ways for companies too. I do just think there's this reality of like just the information that comes out just amongst like genuine connection and relationship and conversation, right? That like there's just more clarity on both ends of like, is this really a good long-term match for both of us, right? In a way that like it's going to be a win-win for everyone involved. So
yeah, I had a discovery meeting with a client this week where the HR director was like, if you haven't already, go to our culture page. It's legitimate. This is like who we are. Like
that's
you
cool.
could ask any of our team members. I mean, our core values is HR doctors. It's these guys right here. We're helpful, resourceful, driven, relentless, and sensible. We hire to it. We behavior-based interview to it. We performance manage and coach to it. Like it's legitimately who we are in our business. And yet I've had meetings with businesses before where they've had their core values on a poster on the wall, and I'm walking around with one of like the HR team leaders and they go, what are your core values? And she's like, oh yeah, that's a good question. It's it's this and that. I'm like, is it this and that? She's like, oh yeah, it is. How did you know that? I'm like, it's on the poster behind you, like, and so like you're totally like bang on that it's great that companies have those things and that they put them together and have these statements, and yet sometimes they're real and live within the company. Or like, like you said, DEI is such like, a buzzword. And one of my recent guests on HR Doctors was a guy, Jordan Lee, who we've just been posting some content about. He is in a wheelchair. I've known him for, I want to say probably 8 or 9 years. He's a cancer survivor. He had like 60 or 70 surgeries on his leg and was an amputee. And I've known him for ages. And now he works for EA as a DEI executive, and really works with the organization to ensure not only that they're able to attract talent, and talks about how like somebody who, let's say, wheelchair bound or has a physical or developmental disability, to be equal in the workforce had to work 30% harder than the person they're equal with. So they're not equal. They're way harder working. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing. And then he's like, never mind that. He's like, if we do hire that person, my job is then to work with the team and the managers to make sure they understand how to best show up for that person. And so again, understanding that some companies do these things, and obviously not every company, we're a small business of 10 people in my company. I can't afford to have a Jordan in my organization, but to understand or to feel that that's an important piece or something we'd be open to. Again, if DEI is really important to you, why and how do you like show up for that in your interview and ensure that that's something that aligns with the companies you're interviewing with?
Exactly, 100%. And once again, it comes back to that clarity piece. When you have the measuring stick, then you can tease out what questions do you need to get answers to, so that you can discern that this is really going to be a good match, right?
Yeah. So let's say someone's gone through that process. They kind of have that clarity. They've identified those companies. They've worked through getting like a really great resume. They've built their LinkedIn profile with purpose.
Yep.
Like what is that like? Is it the last piece for you? I guess outside of them, going through the job offer process and all that, but in terms of like branding themselves on LinkedIn, like what's the strategy there? You've got like 20,000 followers on your like LinkedIn. I don't know how long it took you to build that. Yeah. So like, what are some of the strategies and like approaches to kind of building that personal brand for people?
Yeah. So we talk a lot about content creation. I tell people before, when they're on a discovery call with me, I'm like, if you're going to work with me, you're going to be creating content for LinkedIn, which for most of us, when we first start out is utterly terrifying, right?
Yeah.
It's like the idea of putting ourselves out there in a way that, people can judge, or they can, or they're going to have a reaction to it, whatever it might be. It's very vulnerable, right? But the truth is that creating content really is the quickest, most effective way to really be able to articulate and communicate your value, right? Like, sure, people can look at your resume, people can look at your LinkedIn profile, and I would argue those things they're like two-dimensional, right? Like, and you can do those things and make them amazing, and we need them, and they're vital to, this whole process. But content creation takes all of that and makes it three-dimensional, right? It really it's like that on fire. Like we're just lighting it all on fire in like the best way possible, because then people really feel like they get to know you as like a human being, like a human behind the resume or the LinkedIn profile. So
and what is that like? I don't know if this is an answerable question, but if there's someone out there who, isn't able to connect with you, or, wants to take the crack on their own, like, what does that first like post need to look like? Or what does the, you know, do you even have to get a strategy of here's the 10 posts you're going to do before you post your first one? Like, is there like specific action steps you can kind of, I guess, share with people to help them if they were going to do it on their own?
Yeah, great question. So I tell people, if you've never engaged with LinkedIn before, there's kind of 3 different types of people on LinkedIn. There's what I like to call lurkers, people that are just scrolling and they're reading and they're consuming, right?
Yeah.
There's likers. There's people that'll like give an emoji reaction to a post.
Yeah.
And then there's the people that are actually engaging. But the easiest way to move from lurking to liking to actually engaging is really to start with just commenting. Really what you want to do ideally is you want to find people that are already creating content, ideally people at your target companies, right?
Right.
People who are in the industries or in the types of roles that you're looking to pivot into, to move into. Find those people, whether we want to call them thought leaders or influencers, it doesn't really matter. Whoever they are, people that are regularly showing up, and make sure that you are regularly then showing up to their posts and that you're starting to comment on it, right? Like I like to tell people like, okay, if your reaction to this post is you were going to like it, what do you like about it? And like, just write a comment with that. If you are curious about it, like that's one of the reactions. What are you curious about? Like pose a question. Find a way to just add some value and continue the conversation. And that for the majority of people just feels like the safer, easier way to kind of like tiptoe into this.
Right.
Oftentimes what happens is you'll find that you'll start commenting on people's posts and your comment will get comments back, or your comment will get reactions. And so I have people kind of track their comments for a while and see what comments, right? Like were people really resonating with? And oftentimes you take your comment then and you can turn that into your own post.
Yeah.
And that can be some of the best, I don't know, way to get started, like, right. It can get the juices flowing of like, okay, people really reacted to this. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to write a post about it. But I always say the best first post you can ever write is just simply share your story. Show up, write a little bit about who you are, your career journey, and introduce yourself to people. You'll be amazed at the reactions you get when you just show up and share your story.
Well, I love the baby steps of engaging through like commenting. And if you were going to like, what do you like about it? I think that's such a great question to like ask of yourself. I've said to my team so many times, I mean, we're, you know, an entrepreneurial business, we're still growing. And if someone on my team has a question that they're thinking of asking, but they're maybe a little afraid to ask, I'm like, everybody else probably has the same question. You might as well ask it. Let's get it out there. Let's figure it out. Let's get that, you know, behind us. And if you're engaging with a post and you see something or you like it, or you've got a question, you're curious, or you love it, or whatever, it's insightful. Like there's probably a lot of other people out there in the same position that, you know, resonate with it. And you might as well like do something, say something about it, and you'll probably get engagement. It's awesome.
Yep. 100%. So
nice.
Yeah. And it's a journey. Content creation looks different for everyone. It is not a one size fits all thing, right? A lot of it is like, you just kind of have to dive in and do it, and you have to play around and you have to try different things, and you have to kind of find like what works best for you, but find the people that like you really enjoy the content they're creating. And, you know, oftentimes that inspires, you know, our own content creation journey as well.
Yeah. I think for me, like, and I'll ask this question of you, you know, I've been really thinking lately of like how to best help the job seekers and how to help give them guidance, whether it's with us, whether it's whoever it might be. And I just go back to like the empathy piece for me, where like being a job seeker is really hard. It's really easy to point the finger at everybody else, to blame inflation, to blame the economy, to blame businesses, to blame the government, to blame all these different things. And all those things are real. Do it. Like point as many fingers as you can. Think of all the different reasons why you're negatively impacted, why you've been held back, why you've been, you know, discriminated against, or whatever it may be. Write them all down if you need to, and then like put them aside and go, okay, great. Like now what do I do?
What am I gonna do about it?
Because either you need to like start a company that's going to remove those barriers for everybody else, and you'll be hugely successful, or you need to realize that they exist and they're probably not going away right now while you're in your job search. And how do you like take control of like what you're doing, be responsible and accountable to yourself, and take whatever that next step is? Because not taking whatever that next step is just going to leave you right where you are. And again, pointing those fingers without taking action isn't going to get you anywhere. And again, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to like, maybe sit there and have like, for the entrepreneur side, I call it the entrepreneurial cry. Sometimes you need to sit there and just let it out.
Yes, I've been there too. I've been there too.
You can like, that's totally fine. But then at some point you got to like, dust the scrapes off your knees or whatever and be like, okay, I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to take another step.
Totally. I always tell my job seekers, really, like mindset wise, this is about focusing on the things that we do have control over. There's so much in the job search journey that we don't have control over, right?
Yep.
And we just have to go like this, and we have to let it go. We have to just open-handed say, here we go. And instead turn our time, our energy, our effort, our attention onto the things that we do have control over. 100%. And that's part of the reason why I have such a huge emphasis, right, on the like, let's get you lots of conversations and let's start thinking about content creation, because those are things you have control over, right? That you
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Katelyn, it was awesome having you on. Some really great, insightful stuff. I really hope as this information comes out that there's a job seeker out there that hears or sees something that we shared and it helps them navigate their search. Of course, we'll tag your company pages and your LinkedIn there, and encourage anybody to reach out. And yeah, just I guess any leaving points, anything. If someone wants to get in touch, is there anywhere you suggest they go? Best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. I hang out on LinkedIn, every single day. It is my favorite place to be. It's the only social media I participate in. So nice. Come hang out on LinkedIn, follow along. I write lots of content that is geared towards adding high value to job seekers. So
join the conversation.
Yeah, come join the conversation.
Nice. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.